if we want to have a human-centered future, if we want to have our grandchildren live in a world that we would like to live in ourselves, we're going to have to start making decisions now that impact how people and AI work together. And I don't think our society is up to speed on that yet. We're way behind the curve on this technology, and we need to catch up really quickly. And company managers need to keep up and catch up really quickly, and I don't think they are.
Good morning, HR. I'm Mike Coffey, president of Imperative, Bulletproof Background Checks. And this is the podcast where I talk to business leaders about bringing people together to create value for shareholders, customers, and the community. Please follow, rate, and review Good Morning HR wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or at goodmorninghr.com. The use of artificial intelligence in business, especially when it comes to managing people, has been a frequent topic on this podcast. Most notably, I recommend my conversations last year with Tim Sackett and Kate Bischoff. And my most requested conference presentation this year is about the ethical and practical considerations on the use of AI in HR. In fact, if you're in the El Paso area, I'll be making that presentation to my El Paso SHRM friends on February 29th. Today, I'm happy to be joined by a true digital pioneer who over the last 40 years has been actively involved in the digital transformation of our society. Michael Sherrod is the William M. Dickey Entrepreneur in Residence at Texas Christian University's Neeley School of Business. He has over 40 years of entrepreneurial experience. In the pre-internet age, he was an early leader in digitizing the news industry and has subsequently founded or co-founded 19 companies. He was also the first publisher and founding board member of the Texas Tribune, my go-to source for nonpartisan coverage of Texas government, politics, and public policy. Welcome to Good Morning HR, Michael.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So we've only known each other for a couple years, but your influence on me goes all the way back to the 1980s, which probably neither one of us really wants to admit. But when you helped Fort Worth's local newspaper enter the quasi-digital age with StarText, which was basically a dial-up newspaper and old school bulletin board system. And I spent a lot of time exploring that service on my old Apple II, and my grades in high school reflected that. So thanks for that. But let's start our conversation by drawing on your experience from the 80s to now, old media to new media. As we begin to incorporate AI into how we work, what lessons should we draw from the news media's last 4 decades?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Well, the news media kind of missed the boat. You know, they were early pioneers with things like StarText. We call that a video text service. And incidentally, the Star Telegrams was the only profitable one ever done. Pretty much everyone else tried to go way too big instead of staying local. But one of the things, and unfortunately, the newspaper industry fell in love with their business model, which was a great business model. There's no question about it, and had worked for them for 75 years, really tremendously well. And they couldn't give it up, and they couldn't see, as they said back in those days, trading dollars for dimes to go from print to digital. And as a result, there's only about 5 or 6 newspapers.
So the advertising business model, right?
That's right, the advertising business model. And there's only 5 or 6 that actually successfully made that transition. I mean, you and I remember back in the 80s, the Star Telegram was the media. If you didn't read that, you were out of the loop at the water cooler at work or anywhere else. And now the Star Telegram is hardly relevant to the community anymore, and students don't even know that it exists. So that's they really lost their franchise. And part of the reason they did is because anytime you have advances in technology, especially as those technologies grow over time and become more and more exponential over time, what happens is that if you don't know enough about the new technology to combine it with the old, you can't innovate. You just can't. You can iterate, but you can't innovate. So as a result, the newspaper industry fell way behind. A lot of other industries did as well. And you have to have some ability to handle ambiguity and to adapt to these new kinds of technologies. But what I mean by technologies as they get older, becoming exponential, is like Moore's law. So Moore's law said that every 18 months to 2 years, we could double the number of transistors on a chip. Well, NVIDIA just released a chip with 1.3 trillion transistors on it. Now that's mind-boggling. That's almost inconceivable. But that's the 33rd, doubling. So we're getting up there. Think what the 34th is going to be like. I mean, that's going to be unbelievable. And for many years, people thought we can't double again. But every time we figured out how to do that. So I think the essential message from where we were in the 80s to where we are now is if you want to be part of the digital economy, you constantly have to learn and become aware of and learn these new technologies, these emerging technologies. And I would say right now the most important ones are AR, VR. Well, AI first. Obviously, everyone needs to know AI. AR, VR, Internet of Things, 5G, local computing, cloud computing, cybersecurity, data. You need to understand how to analyze data and where it comes from. If you don't know these the very basics of these technologies, you're going to have a hard time remaining relevant in your work.
And you preceded all of that by saying, if you want to be part of the digital economy, I think there's very few companies that can afford not to be. I mean, unless you want to just to open an Etsy shop, and that's as far as that's, and you want to do, tea coasters over Etsy, even that's got a certain amount of new technology involved. But I don't think any of us can afford to say, well, we can keep doing business the way we've always done it.
Well, there's more than you think. You'd be surprised how slow many large corporations are to adapt. And in fact, if you look at digital transformations, McKinsey came out with a report about 2 years ago that said that 73% of digital transformations fail, and none of them achieve the results that they thought they would achieve with it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is when you are moving a company with a digital transformation, you have to change the mindset of your employees, because if they're not part of that change, they're just not going to be with you. They're going to move on to something else. And anytime you mention the word change in any size company, people immediately become afraid they're going to lose their jobs, and their IQs are halved, I think, because they just stop thinking. Right. So that's part of it. But I think one of the secrets to a even remotely successful digital transformation is changing your legacy structures in the company. I mean, one of the biggest constraints companies have is policies, procedures, structures, systems that they have in place that are old school. And let me give you a perfect example: budgets. Most companies have a yearly cycle for a budget. If you are a company of any size and you have a yearly cycle, that means if an opportunity presents itself, you have to tell the person who's brought that opportunity to you, put it in the budget next year. Well, you've missed it. It's gone by that time. Things are moving too fast. So you have to have a more flexible budget cycle. And what happens to employees in these digital transformations is they're told, oh, we want to innovate. We need to innovate. We've got to iterate more quickly on our products and services, et cetera, et cetera. And they do, and they come with these ideas and they hit, oh, we can't do anything with it till next year. You'll have to get it in the budget. Well, that just kills it dead, kills their enthusiasm dead, kills any mindset change that was coming dead. So if you don't change the structures they work with, they won't change their mindsets, because they'll just be hitting the same wall they always hit. And that's where most companies fail, I think, in the process. They only use half the company, and they tell the employees, go innovate. And when they try to do it, the legacy systems and structures stop them cold.
Yeah, I remember my college internship was an aerospace company here in the DFW area. And back then they were just introducing Wang word processors, black screens with green letters.
Oh yeah.
And I was all over that. I was that era's version of a digital native. I mean, I had a Trash 80 and then an Apple IIe.
Wow.
And then, so when I went in there, I was comfortable with it, but there were still people hugging their Selectrics, their old typewriters and wouldn't let go of them.
Right.
And then in my first HR role, I worked for an HR director, who I'm sure is not listening to this, who insisted that his secretary, which is what he called her back then, print out every email that he received, and he would read them. He would make notes on them. She would type those entries in and forward the email to whomever. So it's easy to become too comfortable, and I see it. I see it in businesses. I see it with some of our clients. But it makes it really hard to hold on to talent. I think that's, because especially if you want to be competitive on the technology side, a lot of those, a lot of your workforce are younger employees. And not to say that us old guys can't keep up, but I mean, a lot of us are choosing not to, apparently. So, getting those young employees engaged and on board, and getting them just really tied in where they're willing to invest themselves into the company, you've got to make it interesting. None of us want to do the same thing, that our grandfathers did. So, but when we talk about AI, do you think AI is just another example of technological change, or is there something different about AI and how it's going to impact the way we work?
Oh, it already has. AI on November 30th, 2022, the world changed. I mean, just about everything changed. And the reason is because this is a democratized technology. It is the most powerful technology that has ever just been handed out to anybody with a phone and a computer. I mean, this is extraordinary that every single one of us who wants to can have access to ChatGPT 4 or 5 or whatever the newest model is. And it's extraordinary in what it can do. And when ChatGPT 5 comes out, even if it's just 10% increase, that's going to be exponential in what AI can do. So this changes the way we look at work. This changes the way we look at employment. This changes the way we look at education. This changes the way we look at healthcare. I mean, this changes a whole lot of just about everything, because it's going to basically change the paradigms that we have lived with, even in the digital age up until now. And those paradigms, I think, are going to change rapidly. A good example is the ability to go from text to video. You can, with the newest increases in some of the various AIs that are out there, you can pretty much create a movie from text. If you want to put your spreadsheet in, you can do that now, and it can help you with your spreadsheets, your formulas, and everything else. It can build PowerPoint. So a lot of the drudgery of day to day is, if you're willing to learn just a few things, can be 20, 70% more productive. Now think about that. 20 to 70% more productive. That is an astonishing number. If a company increased their productivity by 2% a year, they would be throwing parties. So this is really changing companies, and they don't even know it yet. And here's why. Up until now, IT departments have been the central space where everything happened, and everybody had to wait until IT did something. No longer the case. If you're sitting in marketing, or you're sitting in HR, or you're sitting in supply chain or finance, you now have the power to create an innovation all by yourself, just for you, that makes you much more productive, that IT doesn't know anything about, nor will know anything about, probably, at least in where we are right now. That's going to create a tsunami of innovation that is really going to change the way we think about digitization of companies.
Yeah, I mean, you can now create your own personal GPTs.
Yep.
And it's a matter of time. And I know there are third parties already that are doing similar things and building custom apps. You can plug into whether it's, OpenAI or Anthropic's Claude, which I really like a lot. And then there's all the generative tools. I did for the presentation that I make, I share some examples of an employee handbook that I helped somebody put together, and I just said, give me an employee handbook, and I caught a couple mistakes that it made, but
Yep.
just putting together that employee handbook, say, and the initial, it was a good second or third draft, and it saved me hours and hours and hours compared to what we would have done before, which would have been get a copy from somebody else, then go research, what laws are applicable here and there, and start, hammering on it. But I guess all of that leads to, you're obviously pretty bullish on it. And I hear, and I am too, but I still hear a lot of people who are pretty bearish on it, really want to push against the grain. Even business leaders who, maybe they're the ones who've had those failed enterprise efforts in the past about what works and what doesn't with technology. But so where do you think how do you, individuals can use it, but inside the enterprise, the larger organizations, what are the incentives for executives or business leaders to really evaluate how they use AI in delivering goods and services to their customers?
Well, a lot of them are doing it already. If you look at worldwide companies, about 88% of them already have AI projects in place, and they're actively discovering what they can do. Now, I think they're being very, very cautious. They're limiting its ability to spread throughout the organization. They're using it in very specific circumstances, like customer service. Things where its voice capabilities can be really useful. They're not putting it into critical areas yet by any means, but some in finance, some in marketing, those kinds of things. I don't think there's much yet in supply chain, although that's coming along pretty well. Now, one of the reasons that companies are really intrigued by it, and I think you're going to see a lot more experimentation as they become more used to the idea, is that hierarchical structures are struggling. The way the corporation has functioned up until now has worked pretty well. But in the environment we're in right now, it doesn't work well at all, because we're in a very volatile, a very uncertain, a very complex and ambiguous environment. And corporations weren't structured to do that. They were built to build a core competency over time, to get really good at something and make more money at less cost every year, pretty much. And if they grew, it would be to adjacencies or an improvement in the product or something like that. Well, now the lifespan of large companies is only about 14 years now, and before they get merged or bought or go out of business. So as a result, they've got to get way more quick in terms of creating new products and services for their customer segments. And hierarchies can't do that. So they're going to have to find a new path, and they're going to have to find a path that allows them to be aggressive in taking advantage of volatility and complexity and uncertainty and ambiguity. And almost no one knows how to do that. There is a company called Haier, H-A-I-E-R, Appliance and Electronics out of China that is structured in such a way that they can actually take advantage of the world we live in. But there's only a few companies in the world that are structured that way. They're very much like networks rather than hierarchies. And this company's
Say
had
more about that.
like,
what does that look like? Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's had 23% growth year over year for 25 years, which is kind of extraordinary. And it's it's $100+ billion company. They own companies all around the world. They own GE Appliance in the United States, actually, and they've turned GE around in a very short period of time. So the way it's organized, it's 4,000 independent entrepreneurial units. And about 400 or 500 of them are customer facing. So they are actually talking to their customers every day, and they call that zero distance between the company and the customer. They're talking to that customer through social media all the time. And when they sell them products, they have Internet of Things in there that talk about usage and show them how often they use it and how they use it, et cetera. But let me give you an example. So if you were in the company, let's say you were just hired, and you would go into what's called the pool, and you would make a base salary, very, very small salary, until you had an opportunity to find a place you wanted to be. And let's say you had a friend who was working in the computer section of Haier, and you saw that they were getting a lot of complaints from gamers about their computer. So you think, okay, I've got all these complaints. I think I could start a new unit for gaming computers. So you basically send that proposal into the main software of Hire, and you get an approval, and they give you some seed money, and you go get 12 to 15 people to join you in building a gaming computer. And you get to decide your strategy, you get to decide your salary and how everyone's going to be compensated, and you get to decide who you hire and fire. Hire has nothing to do with that. That is on you. You can go outside of Hire, venture capital if you want, or all of you can contribute your own money to it. And that can be part of your ownership. So once you do that, then you go and you have an idea of what you want. You contract with the prototyping unit. Then you contract with the software unit. Then you contract with the distribution company, one of the distribution pods, and then you contract with the distribution pod, et cetera, until you have a community of folks that are helping you build this gaming computer, and you have contracts with each one of them that spells out how everybody's going to get paid. And these contracts are pretty common, so there's templates for them. You don't have to make them up. And if along the way it turns out that you're not doing a very good job, one of your other folks in the company in your little pod can say, "I have a better way." Pitch the group, and if the group says, "Yeah, we like that way better," you stay in the group, but you're no longer the CEO.
Wow.
So it's very highly entrepreneurial for everybody. So anyway, so you get all this little community of these independent units are making the gaming computer. Meanwhile, your group is talking to the consumer all the time. You build a prototype, you send it out to the consumers. They check it out. They give you advice. You iterate. You send it out again. Same thing. Very lean startup-y. So once you have it down, you build the product. You go into manufacturing. You tell them how many you want. In the real world, they did this in less than 8 months. The first week, they sold 300,000 computers.
Wow.
And that's how flexible they are. To build something like that in a regular hierarchical corporation would have taken years if you could have gotten it done at all. All the bureaucracy. So Hire has basically been recognized for basically getting rid of corporate bureaucracy. And like I said, if your group didn't make it, it would dissipate. And you and some of your colleagues would probably go back into the pool until you found another idea. Now, they are super flexible. So I'll give you an example. A delivery guy was delivering washing machines to peasants in the farms outside, in the fields, and he discovered they were washing their vegetables in their washing machine. So he went back to Hire and created a group that created a washing machine that had two cycles, one for clothes, one for vegetables. They sold tens of thousands of those things, and the guy became a millionaire, and his group did too. And then there was another group that went IPO, was their delivery group. So they started out delivering Hire appliances and so forth, and now they are the largest delivery service in China. They have over 200,000 employees. They are people who deliver goods to millions of locations, but only 30% of what they deliver is Hire. They've expanded to everyone else in China because they have such a fabulous network for delivery. They went IPO, and the people who started all became millionaires overnight, but they're still part of Hire. So it can take advantage of new things very, very quickly. And if it doesn't work, they dissipate. And another group that has an idea or sees an opportunity takes its place. Hierarchical companies can't do that. It's way too scary for them. It's scary for the employees too, but Hire has been able to recruit people from all over the world who want to have this opportunity, because it's not being like an entrepreneur out there by yourself. You have a brand, you have marketing capability, you have money available, you have eager employees who want to be entrepreneurial, you've got customers already. I mean, there's a lot to like about that, and you still have the upside of making a lot of money.
And so, that model allows for quicker adoption of technology.
Yep.
And it's kind of the fail fast
exactly.
approach.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so we try it and it doesn't work, and then we iterate and try it again or try something different.
Yeah, it's a startup factory, basically. Mm-hmm. And those that work keep going and make money, and those that don't, try again.
Wow. And so that's Google's 20% innovation time kind of thing on steroids, really.
That's right. It's
Wow.
all innovation time. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. And let's take a quick break. Good Morning HR is brought to you by Imperative, bulletproof background checks. At Imperative, our mission is to help risk-averse clients make well-informed decisions about the people they involve in their business. And we deliver it all with fast and friendly service. If you're an HRCI or SHRM certified professional, this episode of Good Morning HR has been pre-approved for 1/2 hour of recertification credit. To obtain the recertification information, visit goodmorninghr.com and click on Recert Credits. Then select episode 136 and enter the keyword STAR Text. That's STARTEXT, all one word. And if you're looking for even more recertification credit, check out the webinars page at imperativeinfo.com. And now back to my conversation with Michael Sherrod. So anytime we introduce new technologies, they 99% of the time, they increase productivity, they lower costs, they improve standards of living. But with every change, there's somebody who's left, businesses or individuals who are left at a disadvantage. So as we look at AI, who stands to lose the most? I guess let's start with we've kind of talked about the corporate side, the people who aren't willing to innovate or make the change. So on the workforce, on the labor side, who stands to lose with the advent of AI?
Well, it's interesting because it covers just about all socioeconomic parts of the economy. So initially, it's going to be customer service reps. It's going to be people who write copy. It could be script writers. It could be advertising writers, et cetera. Secretaries, people who are doing jobs where they're adding value, but at a level that AI can pretty much already do. So I think that's going to be first. And then you're going to graduate up to people who have very rote jobs. For instance, radiologists. Radiologists are very highly trained people, and they look at x-rays all day long, and they can, because of their experience, they can see potential problems or disease or cancer, whatever it may be. But even the best radiologists can only look at about 600,000 at best x-rays in their entire lifetime. An AI can look at tens of millions and can compare them in a nanosecond. So we already have proof that AI is more effective than doctors at figuring out what the problem is in x-rays. So I don't think it's going to be very long before radiologists or a lot of other fields, you have to have an AI who approves your diagnosis before an insurance company will pay for it. So I think that's going to impact even doctors, even highly trained doctors in very specific fields. Sonograms are going to be read by them. X-rays are going to be read. MRIs. Everything is going to be read by an AI and a doctor probably for quite a while. And we know that AI or any other kind of robotic device or machine learning device is more effective with a human, and the human is more effective with the device. So right now we're kind of in this space where cobots and co-learning are going to be very much and co-working are going to be very much a part of the landscape. It's going to be a while, I think. Now, a while could be 2 years, but it's going to be a while before AI can catch up to a lot of the nuance that humans bring to critical thinking and to decision making and empathy. And here's something that I think we're not quite up to speed on yet, but I think it's coming very quickly. AI does not have any emotions. It doesn't know how to be empathetic. Even though it's been trained on human content, it has a hard time being those things. It can respond to those things, but it has a hard time being those or doing those things. And so I think what you're going to see is management is going to be split. AI is going to do the process stuff, and humans are going to do the human stuff. And we know we have a management crisis in the United States because before COVID, 75% of people would have given up a raise to see their boss fired. After COVID, 75% of people who quit their jobs quit because of their immediate supervisor. So that early 75% translated into, no, I don't even want to stay here anymore. So they left and found new ways to work. And what that tells us is that human beings have become so used to handling processes that humans happen to be a part of, and that made humans very unhappy. Now the process is going to be managed by AI, and the humans are going to have to be managed by humans. And that means we're going to have to go back to the humanities a little bit, understand a little bit more about psychology, a little bit more about empathy, a little bit more about all of the ways that we can relate to people and each other, and have a much greater understanding of the messiness that people bring to the process. We get sick. We have children. We have other obligations. We get divorces. All kinds of things happen to us. And we're going to have a new set of managers that I think are going to be specialists in understanding how best to manage human beings.
I've been saying for a long time, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to somebody using AI. Mm-hmm. And I still think that's true. It's just that person's going to be able to do the job of 3 or 4 people, or that the job is just so radically going to change that one person isn't going to have to do the tab A and slot A stuff all day. And so those other 3 or 4 people whose skills aren't needed for this particular role. Let's get into the ethical side of it. What is a company's responsibility as we just increase efficiencies? I mean, everybody post-COVID is we're dealing with, slimmer margins than we were dealing with, product cost, labor cost, everything's going up. And so I think it's inevitable that we look for ways to reach efficiencies. But what do you think the company's responsibilities are as we begin to deal with those things?
That depends on if the company is kind of a pre-World War II idea of who their stakeholders are, or a post-1980 idea of who their stakeholders are. After World War II, we basically, equal stakeholders were shareholders, management, employees, and vendors, and the community. So those 5 were pretty equal.
Kind of what we call conscious capitalism now.
That's right. Yeah. And then the 80s came along, and it was shareholder primacy all the way. And shareholder primacy has not been good for competitiveness in the United States. I mean, 66% of corporate profits have been used for shareholder buybacks for quite a while. And that has kept, no new R&D, no new products and services, no market share gains. I mean, it's been pretty bad. It's still growing, but not the way it could. Now, dividends are coming back, they say, but, we'll see. So if you're if your World War II thought process and equal stakeholders, 5 of them, the humans factor is going to make a lot more difference to you. You're not going to put all your money towards shareholders. You're going to actually try to make people central to what you do. If you're post 80s in your philosophy, the economic incentives are too great. You're going to let those people go, and you're not going to care. You're basically, hey, go find something. You're not prepared for the future. Good luck. And it's all going to be about shareholders. And I think that ethically and morally, we need to rethink that. We need to think that if we're about to make this step into pure automation, we need to be very, very careful about how we do that. And we need to bring people along with it. If we want to have a human-centered future, if we want to have our grandchildren live in a world that we would like to live in ourselves, we're going to have to start making decisions now that impact how people and AI work together. And I don't think our society is up to speed on that yet. We're way behind the curve on this technology, and we need to catch up really quickly. And company managers need to keep up and catch up really quickly. And I don't think they are. I think they're stuck in their old model, just like the newspaper industry was with their thinking. I think a lot of managers today think that AI is just another thing like a calculator that, or an iPhone. And it is not. It is much, much more pervasively important than either of those devices.
Yeah, I've definitely heard older managers in the HR world and in other areas of the enterprise say things like, well, I'm retiring in 10 years.
Yes, exactly.
This is not something I'm going to have to deal with, or I'll leave those decisions for somebody else.
Now, if you're going to retire in 10 years, you're going to retire in 2 because you're going to be replaced. I mean, seriously, any rules-based work, AI is going to be part of it really, really quickly. So HR is a lot of rule-based. And, when you're talking about company policy and all of that, that's a lot of rules. And, 66% of people during COVID said they would prefer to work for a robot rather than a person, because a robot would be fair in the way they applied the rules. So HR, watch out. Just giving you an early warning there.
No. Well, and I think you're right. And I've been railing against HR as being the police officer for the company for years. And I think the HR professionals who understand the enterprise, understand how the company makes money, understands, the value of incentives, all those things are the ones who see the value in educating, developing the workforce, doing those things versus, just looking for an excuse to write somebody up or just, being the yes or no answer to questions. So what kind of decisions, if I'm an entity and I see an opportunity to increase productivity by 30% in many cases, when we're talking about increasing productivity, we're really talking about replacing, some of our labor with, better technology. What are my considerations there? Do I wait 6 months? Do I wait a year for these other people to find other roles? Or, what should a company be? A company that wants to act like, a conscious capitalism type company, or a company that's really focused on all their stakeholders. How should they? What are the decisions? What should they be thinking about?
I have pretty strong opinions about this, and I probably am an outlier on it. But the way what I think they should do, I think they should start training their people right now. And if people don't want to be trained, I think they should be aware that they may not be around very long. And that should be messaged to them. I've always believed in absolute transparency with employees. Whether I was working in a corporation after selling them a company or whether I was on my own, I would tell them exactly what was going on so they could prepare. And I would do the same with the employees that I had. And I would say, we're going to train you to be experts in this in your field so that even if you don't stay here, you're going to be able to go somewhere and maybe get a 40% premium on your salary, which a lot of companies are offering if you know AI. So I would start with training my employees, and I would start by giving them the very basics of what it is and see where they went with that, see if they wanted more instruction, if they really got into it, et cetera. And I believe that human beings right now, any worker has to be a constant learner. You cannot stop learning, period. You can't give it a pause because it's going to be moving so fast. The course I took when AI first came out is completely irrelevant now. Right. I mean, it has absolutely zero relevancy to what I need to know right now. But it gave me a foundation in which to learn the new stuff. And that was what was important. And I told my students at TCU, you must learn this now so it's easier to learn each succeeding stage because it's going to go very fast. And that's what I would be trying to do for my employees. And I would work with them to make them understand that their productivity is going to go up remarkably. And if they have an AI with them, it's going to go up even more. And the more productivity we have, the more money there is to spread around for everybody. And I would be making sure that instead of rewarding shareholders, I would at this point be rewarding employees, because I'm not going to be able to reward shareholders if my employees don't do this. Even if I try to go 100% AI, that's going to take a while, and it's going to be very costly in terms of mistakes that are made, in terms of realizing, we actually do need people in this particular place. I would rather take more time and organically learn the issues, the ups and downs, than try to do it all at once and just mess things up remarkably so. So I think people are an important part of this equation. And if we don't involve them, I think we're gonna regret it. And I think companies that don't involve their employees are going to regret it a lot.
Well, I think that's a great place to end this one. There's so many more questions I want to get into about transparency and the generative AI based on employees' own, work product, so many things. But we try to keep this to a 30-minute podcast, and I never succeed. And my producer, Rob, yells at me all the time. But thank you so much, Michael, for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
And thank you for listening. You can comment on this episode or search our previous episodes at goodmorninghr.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcast. Rob Upchurch is our technical producer, and you can reach him at robmakespods.com. And as always, thank you to Imperative's marketing coordinator, Mary Ann Hernandez, who keeps the trains running on time. And I'm Mike Coffey. Don't hesitate to reach out if I can be of service to you personally or professionally. I'll see you next week, and until then, be well, do good, and keep your chin up.